This is a place where few travellers dare to tread. A place that's been locked in bloody conflict for more than 20 years. But beyond the conflict is a land of extraordinary beauty, a place that was once the fountainhead of one of the world's oldest beliefs. For me, this is a special journey to a valley hidden deep in this strictly Islamic land, as I seek the gigantic relics of a much more ancient faith, the lost Buddhas of Afghanistan. This is a picture of Afghanistan you've probably never seen. It's an ancient realm of extraordinary culture, landscape, and people. My name is David Adams. I'm a photojournalist who specialises in travelling to the ends of the earth. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. Because hidden away in the remote Bamiyan Valley are one of the unknown wonders of the world. Some of the oldest images of the Buddha, gigantic statues which few Westerners have ever seen. This was the place I remembered, a country torn apart by war. 5 years ago, I was here as a freelance war correspondent.
Now the front line is that way, and the Hezbollah militia are firing right over my position through the other side of the city.
But I knew that beyond the bombs and the bigotry was a hidden treasure, a place from where an ancient religion took its creed to the world. I swore that one day I'd seek out Bamiyan and its lost Buddhas. Afghanistan is a landlocked country in Central Asia, sandwiched between Pakistan and Iran. From the capital Kabul, I head for Herat, and then up to Mazar-e-Sharif, and then on to Bamiyan. My journey starts, though, in Pakistan, at a point where most people get their first and only glimpse of Afghanistan. It's on a road well trodden by armies, smugglers, and spies, the Khyber Pass. A bus takes me on the first leg of my journey, and for the first 40 miles, we pass through the tribal area, a region run by autonomous chieftains. As a Westerner, I must take an armed guard because kidnapping and banditry are rife here. Then a familiar sight. 5 years ago, I remember passing this burnt-out tank. It's still here. We've just crossed the border into Afghanistan.
Allow this 10,000 rupees Afghani, this Kabul bank.
These kids are offering to exchange my American dollars and Pakistani rupees for the local currency, Afghanis.
So how much do they want for all of this?
He's asking for
100 rupees
He wants 100 rupees.
Yes.
for this
that's-
amount of money.
That
He
doesn't
said,
sound like the right exchange rate, is it?
yeah, I don't think so, but that's what he wants from you. If you can
The
buy
problem is, there are 40,000 Afghanis to the dollar, and these guys are only offering me 10,000. But someday I think he'll be a very good businessman. Thank you. After being so pleasantly fleeced by the kids, I hire an old Russian army jeep at the border. With it comes my driver Aziz and the man who'd be my guide, Abdul. And off we set towards the spectacular Hindu Kush. Slowly the road snakes towards Kabul, and as we go, it brings back a terrible sense of déjà vu. The last time I travelled up this road, it was controlled by the warlords of the Mujahideen, and there were checkpoints all the way along it, each one extracting a toll. If you refused to pay it, it could have cost you your life. But for the moment, this part of Afghanistan is relatively peaceful. Soon I get my first glimpse of the capital, Kabul. You don't have to go far to see evidence of war. Everywhere, there's rubble. We film discreetly. Photography of humans is officially banned in Afghanistan. And because this is a country suffering from trade sanctions, Westerners aren't that popular.
The people got no food to eat. Some of them, they are deprived from basic human needs. So of course they are not happy, and of course they are part of it. They are blaming the Western countries.
So they feel totally abandoned by
Yeah, of course.
international
The people
community.
say we didn't commit any crime. Why they have to impose sanctions on us?
In Kabul, the law only allows foreigners to stay in one hotel, and one hotel alone, the Continental. It's an ugly building, not improved by the ravages of war. It was where I stayed last time, and it's where I stay this time. And what a lineup. One of the great tenets of Islam is that all visitors must be honoured,
Hello. How are you?
whatever their country or religion.
Good. Hello. Hello. How are you? Salam alaikum. Hello. Nice to meet you.
The plight of the Continental sums up Afghanistan. Normally, an international hotel like this would be brimming with businessmen, politicians, and power brokers. But aside from me, it's empty. A deserted monument to Afghanistan's international isolation. After years of shelling, many of the windows are still covered in plastic. There's a shortage of glass. And I'm glad that I wasn't here when these rounds hit. I asked for my old room. It's of course no problem. I've got the pick of the hotel.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
That's great. Thank you very much.
And it's still got the best view in town.
Now, 5 years ago, standing here. This was a panorama of battle. There were tanks over on that far hill. All the way through the city was just gunfire, and then from outside, rockets had come in and just lob into the city. It's just incredible to see it at peace. It's something I couldn't quite imagine 5 years ago.
But I want to go back to where I was as a correspondent, the front line. The killing grounds of Kabul, where I'd witnessed so much death and suffering. And it wasn't just the humans who suffered. What's so amazing is that the Kabul Zoo is still here. Even more surprising, so are some of the animals, and in surprisingly good condition too, since they were creatures caught in the crossfire.
Well, I guess you'd have to say this is about the saddest bear in the world, but it's a miracle that he's here at all, because during the battle for Kabul, the zoo was the front line, and all around here there are trenches. What's incredible is that the zookeepers stayed here during all that fighting and tended the animals. And they also looked after the trees because everybody wanted to cut them down for firewood. It's just one of those amazing stories that comes out of war.
The bear was unharmed, but the lion was hurt when a grenade was lobbed into his cage. He's blind, but alive. It's here that I first encountered the Islamic warriors whose leaders control this country, the Taliban. They couldn't look less like the fierce champions of Islam demonized in the Western media. And in a place where photography is rigidly policed, they're naturally enough intrigued by my camera. But to place all Taliban in the same fundamentalist camp is not to understand where they're coming from. Most of them just want to see order restored and a better life for their children.
Imagine being a kid growing up with this as your playground. A lot of this has been demined and a lot of the unexploded bombs been taken out. A lot of children lose their legs just having fun.
It's been a daunting first day back in Kabul, back in a ruined city where people still live with the prospect that any day the end of their world could come. I've been invited here to take photos. Yet this is a country where under the Taliban's Islamic code, there are severe restrictions on taking photographs. Tomorrow, I get a permit. But as I was to discover, getting the permit is one thing, making it work, quite another. Morning in Kabul, and sunrise reveals a shattered city. 20 years of fighting has taken a terrible toll on the Afghan capital. This was once the Shah's mausoleum, and this was the old royal palace. Today, they're little more than rubble. But with Shahs and emperors long gone, shepherds run their sheep in the royal grounds. My journey will take me across the country from Kabul to Herat. But before I leave, I need permission from the Ministry of Information to travel to the great Buddhas of Bamiyan. And for that, I'll have to wait. And all the time, I'm being watched. The Taliban are everywhere. You can tell them by their black turbans. The word Taliban means religious student. And at the religious school, or the madrasa, they learn the Quran by rote, all 114 chapters of it. By doing this, they hope to interpret Islamic law in a pure, uncontaminated way. Or that's the theory. As a force for change, the Taliban have only been around since 1996. Even so, their rules for living are based on an 8th century text. It determines everything they do, even whether or not I can take photographs. But time is running short if I want to get to the Bamiyan Buddhas. There's still no word from the ministry, so it's time to do a bit of public relations. If an army marches on its stomach, let's see if I can appeal to the Talibans. Hidden in a back street is a kitchen, and I love cooking pasta.
Well, what I'm going to cook for the Afghans around here is what's called puttanesca, and it's an Italian pasta. First thing we do is cut up lovely fresh tomatoes.
But be warned, they're often fertilized with human waste, so wash them very carefully.
There's actually a very funny story about a guy who was wanting to smuggle opium out of Afghanistan, and to hide the smell, he actually put the opium down underneath a truckload of onions. Of course, he gets to the border and he gets arrested for smuggling onions, because you're not allowed to take onions out of Afghanistan. They didn't care about the opium.
By now, I'm acquiring quite an audience. The sight of a Westerner cooking for Afghans must be strange indeed.
And that is puttanesca, Afghan style.
See, I'm very hungry.
If you pass that round.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Now for the moment of truth.
Well, I'm very pleased.
Oh, it's very delicious.
I think Afghans are just very polite.
No.
Fortunately, one of
It's
my
okay,
guests is from the Ministry of Information.
I like it.
You like pasta?
Maybe he can put a good word in for us. He obviously likes my cooking, but what about Abdul?
It's nice.
Do you like it?
Yeah, but no, so I think you... Did you forget salt?
No, but it's got capers and anchovies. They're very salty.
Can I use some ketchup?
He wants to put salt and ketchup on it. Okay, I don't think I'm going to change the culinary tastes of Afghanistan in one meal, but we can but try.
Well, it seems to have worked. In the morning, I'm summoned to meet Mr. Fayaz Mohammed Fayaz, Taliban head of information. And as spokesman for the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he's a powerful man indeed. Maybe he can grant me permission to see the Buddhas.
We are very happy that with the formation of Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, from the very beginning, has brought security or stability to the country.
But Mr. Fayaz is also a religious scholar and a strict adherent of Quranic law. So on the one hand, his law forbids the depiction of any human image. On the other, he wants to rebuild tourism and promote Afghanistan to the world. That's his dilemma. He doesn't want to be filmed, but to get his message out, he has to be.
And what do you want the outside world most to understand about the administration here in Afghanistan?
We have put an end to the anarchy, to the civil war in the country, and with that, not only the tourists, but even the journalists could freely visit all corners of the country, and they could succeed to go wherever they wanted, and they could succeed visited many places.
And that includes us. We get the go-ahead. Ironically, to celebrate the good news, Abdul takes Mr. Fayaz's photograph with my Polaroid camera. So we can go where we like and film who we like? Well, not exactly. What Mr. Fayaz neglects to tell us is that we're still not allowed to film people in towns. Nor does he warn us that he has no control over the most powerful government agency in Afghanistan, the dreaded Ministry for the Promotion of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. The spies of these religious police are everywhere, invisible but always present. So all filming must be done very discreetly.
Now, we've been given a permit to film in Afghanistan, the first film crew to be allowed to do so by the Taliban government. The problem is, we're not allowed to film anybody. We can only film the country and buildings. So doing this, walking openly in the street and filming, is very much against the law. I could be arrested and our cameras could be taken away and smashed. So as you can appreciate, this is not going to be an easy film to make.
So unsure of exactly what lies in store, we fire up our Jeep and head for the airport. Our destination? Herat. Once one of the greatest centres of learning in Asia, it was also where one of the greatest spy games was played out. The Afghan city of Herat is 400 miles west of Kabul as the crow flies, and it's been a battleground for thousands of years. In its day, it was one of the greatest centres of culture and learning in medieval Asia. The city is on Afghanistan's western border with Iran. From here, I'll head northeast towards Mazar-e-Sharif before I go to Bamiyan. And once more, I'm faced with delays. Abdul heads out to try and get us filming permits, reminding us that in Herat, we're not high on the Taliban's list of priorities.
The Taliban, from the very beginning, they were under criticism from Western media. And that is why they are paranoid.
Abdul is trying to find the local Taliban commander, the only man who can give us the nod. It seems Kabul's ministerial writ doesn't extend to Herat. So while Abdul haggles, I wait in a restaurant specialising in boiled sheep's brains. The minutes turn to hours. My day has been a write-off. Next day, a permit arrives. We can film Herat's ancient university, though there's not much left of it now. It was largely demolished by British soldiers in the 18th century. Earthquakes and war destroyed the rest, but miraculously, the minarets remain. Not even Russian shells managed to fell them. But permission to enter the citadel hasn't come through yet. So to fill in time, I explore a local antique shop.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Very good.
Good morning.
You have a fantastic shop here.
Thank you. Just look it.
Thank you very much.
Just look it.
Okay.
Big shop, many things.
Okay.
Maybe glass, silver, copper. Just look it. Just look it.
In a way, it's like a junk shop of history, filled with discarded objects from Afghanistan's turbulent past. Banknotes from Imperial Russia, shoes from a Shah's harem, coins reputedly minted at the time of Alexander the Great. And if you like old weapons, a particularly deadly gun.
This looks like probably the most famous guns in Afghanistan. They're called the Gazelle, and it's what the Afghans used to fight the British for probably the First and Second Wars. And they used to fire these off their horses, this low butt, and they used to hold them very, very high like this. Incredible weapon, I think incredibly hard to aim, but apparently they were very good, very accurate.
But this is what I'm really after. Glassware that's unique to this shop. Just out the back is a kiln where the same family's been making it to the same formula for centuries. And their method? Well, it's a closely guarded secret, handed down from generation to generation. And even with sanctions, they have no shortage of buyers. In fact, they've just got another.
2 pieces, $1.
2 pieces, $1.
I think I'll be buying a lot.
Yes.
At last, permission has arrived from the Taliban. I can film in the Great Citadel. I must say I'm surprised. This is a military base, and pictures would be of strategic interest to an enemy. Yet they let us film. But on one condition. Every person must be removed before we enter. I'd always wanted to explore this fortress because of its role in a forgotten piece of 19th century history. The secret spy wars between Britain and Russia, known as the Great Game. Afghanistan was the gateway to British India, and Russia wanted to control that gateway. Intrepid British and Russian army officers roamed the country in disguise, mapping and spying all the military routes. One of them was Lieutenant Eldridge Pottinger. After being held under siege for months in the Herat citadel, it was Pottinger who saved the day for the Afghans.
Finally, the Persians began to breach the walls, and the Afghans on this side seemed everything was lost. The Grand Vizier sat down in the dust. He was going to give up. But Pottinger grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and marched him towards the invading Persians with his sword waving in the air. This absolutely terrified the Persians. They all fell back, and then the Afghans within the fort followed them out, and they saved the city. Incredible story.
In a way, the Great Game sums up Afghanistan's problem in a nutshell. It's a country sandwiched between rival empires. So for invading armies, it's always been a battlefield on the way to somewhere else. How any of these armies were able to move through Afghanistan boggles the mind. The roads through the mountains are appalling. I'm now heading north, slowly drawing closer to the battlefront and the killing fields, the deadly legacy of more than 20 years of war. The centre of Afghanistan is one of the bleakest wildernesses in Asia. Everything here is influenced by one chilling fact. They've been fighting not for 20 years, but for 2,000 years. For Afghanistan has always been a land of invasion, rival warlords, and violence.
Beautiful little castle, that. And you see them all up and down these valleys. They defend every strategic position. The trouble is, when you're traveling in Afghanistan, you've got to be really careful if you want to go and explore one, because they're covered in minefields from both the Russian time and also from the Civil War.
We're now deep in the mountains of central Afghanistan, on the road to Mazar-e Sharif, the last major stop before the front line.
I hope that we don't cause them any problems by coming here, but we had to really...
The killing fields, though, extend all the way to the outskirts of the city. This is landmine country.
the drought in Afghanistan, many places in Afghanistan.
And if that isn't enough, there's another scourge. A terrible drought has forced these people out of the nearby mountains into this place, an abandoned barracks in the middle of a battlefield. Unexploded shells and landmines are everywhere. The human toll extracted by starvation and explosion is terrible. This man has lost 3 of his 5 children in the last 2 weeks.
He complained from Hungary, from drought.
Does he have enough to eat now? Still not enough.
Still, they are hungry.
For once, we can film safely without our Taliban minders, because we're here under the protection of the Halo Trust. These guys are the miracle workers who destroy the unexploded shells and landmines.
How long has it taken to collect just these? Is this over some months or weeks?
Yeah,
But a serious.
a serious?
A serious is better.
It's as he says, in 3 days we collected all of
3
these.
days?
3 days, yeah.
That's incredible. So every 3 days you find this many
Yeah,
in
yeah,
these fields?
absolutely.
This work is hideously slow, and there's no way to go any faster. If you hurry this process, you make mistakes. And mistakes lead to a single result: death. It's estimated there are still 10 million landmines to be cleared in Afghanistan. Every day, someone, somewhere, treads on one.
Bashir Khan here has just found a landmine, and that's one of thousands yet to be dug up on this hillside. And behind me, this valley, in 3 years, they've cleared upwards of 1,800 mines, more than 3,000 unexploded bombs and rockets, and nearly 70 anti-tank mines. Probably take 10 years to clear all the high priority areas in Afghanistan. That's where people live. But that's only if the support and the money to pay for it continues.
At last, after 2 days' torturous drive, we make it into Mazar-e-Sharif. Despite all the fighting, one building has managed to survive all the shells and bombs: the Great Blue Mosque. This time, there's no problem with filming. Of course, the same rules apply here. No photography of human faces. So the Taliban clear everybody out of the mosque. I feel a bit guilty. It's almost noon, time for prayers. But rules are rules. No one may stray in front of our cameras. This is one of the holiest shrines in Islam. It's the burial place of Muhammad's son-in-law, Hazrat Ali. Not only is it a spiritual place, but it's one of the most beautiful mosques in the entire Muslim world.
Well, we've just heard some rather disturbing news from the BBC and confirmed by the UN that the US might be moving towards another missile strike in Afghanistan aimed at one of the camps perhaps associated with the alleged terrorist Osama bin Laden. And we can't confirm that, but I've got to say, standing here in this beautiful, serene place, it's incredible to believe that maybe only 40 kilometres away, cruise missiles will be landing in the next few hours.
On hearing this, the UN pull out. Other foreign aid agencies follow suit, and paranoia reigns. All we can do is wait. Two days later, and nothing has happened. This time, the missiles don't come. But false alarms like this are part of daily life here. Never knowing when a bomb might fall is just another pressure on a country already living on the edge. With the crisis seemingly past, the paranoia subsides. And I want to visit the ruins of one of the oldest cities on Earth.
We just heard, we got permission.
Once more, Afghanistan's violent history rises to confront us. This time, the timeline is 3,000 years. This is Balkh, once called the mother of all cities, though it also could be called the mother of all cemeteries.
You know, wandering around places like this is boring to a lot of people. It's just a bunch of stones and bones. Well, in fact, as you can see, that's literally what it is. There are bones all over the place. Most of us just think about the last 20 years of war here in Afghanistan, but really it's about much more. Places like Balkh and sites like this all over the country. These bones, these ruins, go back to the earliest of times. This is what Afghanistan is really all about.
In fact, Balkh is built on bones. All around its crumbling walls are the bleached remains of human habitation. Every time the city was sacked, what was left of the population simply rebuilt it. If anything sums up Afghanistan's violent history, it's Balkh. Over 3,000 years, it's been sacked an almost unbelievable 700 times. Is it any wonder that the Afghans are crying out for peace?
Peace is a very important thing. It's not an ordinary thing. You see, everything comes from peace. Now, if you got peace, you will have school. If you got peace, you can work. If you got peace, I mean, you don't have to travel from one place to another to be a refugee.
Tomorrow, I head for a sacred valley, a place where a religion was once practiced that prided itself on peacefulness. But it isn't a valley of Islam. I'm finally heading for Bamiyan, the lost valley of the Buddhas. It's autumn in Afghanistan, and when I first set eyes on the Bamiyan Valley, I'm astounded by its beauty. This is the Afghanistan few people ever see, and I'm one of the first Westerners for a long time who's been allowed to show it to the world. The last sector of my journey has taken me from Mazar-e-Sharif into the heart of the Hindu Kush. Not far from where natural mineral waters bubble from the ground, I find a great photographic vantage point. From here, I catch my first glimpse of the lost Buddhas of Afghanistan. And what colossal statues they are. That one there in the distance is 180 feet high. That's 57 meters, carved out of living rock, the height of a 20-story building. But I want to get much closer. For that, I need permission. So I climb the Bamiyan citadel and ask the Taliban. This medieval fortress is both a ruin and a strategic outpost. The Taliban tell me this place is called the City of Noise. It's deathly quiet now, but it got its name because of the cries of people slaughtered here by Genghis Khan more than 800 years ago. The killing went on for days.
And you can die just as horribly up here today, because this whole mountain is full of mines. Any step just off the trails here and you're dead.
News from the Taliban commander is not good. The Buddhas are of military significance. Access will almost definitely be denied. While Abdul keeps up the pressure, we stay in the local village. These are the Hazara people, and I'm told the Taliban would rather we didn't have much contact with them. The Hazara are the descendants of Genghis Khan's warriors, and they want independence for their valley, which is probably why the Taliban don't entirely trust them. At the moment, there's an uneasy truce between the Taliban and the Hazara. But the Hazara not only seem to want contact with us, they want me to play in one of their volleyball teams. We film discreetly. Officially, the Taliban has banned all sports in Afghanistan. Well, obviously, no one told the Hazara. The following morning, there's an urgent summons, and I hope it doesn't mean trouble. It doesn't. If we leave this second, I can see the Buddhas. But when I get there, it's not quite what I expected. It's ancient, all right. It's definitely beautiful, but it's small. Not one of those big ones I saw across the valley the day before. It's also not in very good shape.
But the irony is, the very nature of this sculpture was the cause of its destruction, because Muslims abhor the worship of idols. And so from about the 7th century, Muslim pilgrims coming through this valley simply obeyed their religion. And this is the result.
But there's an even greater irony. Buddhism was also a religion that abhorred idols. Over 2,000 years ago, the Buddha was represented by a symbol, usually a footprint or a wheel. But then a great change in Buddhism took place, and it took place right here. The kings who ruled Bamiyan launched a new, humanized form of Buddhism by turning the Buddha into a recognizable man. So the Bamiyan Buddhas are not only some of the biggest, they are some of the oldest in the world. But for me, they're so tantalisingly near and yet so frustratingly far away. Early next morning, we have one last-ditch attempt to get permission. And miraculously, it works. The Taliban commander will let us see the giant Buddhas in return for a favour. He wants me to take his photograph. So once again, in a country which bans photography of the human form, this is not the time to point out inconsistencies in anyone's logic.
Make it warm. You can go fast. Here you are? That's good.
So at last, I get my chance to explore the Buddhas. They've been allowed to fall into ruin for 1,000 years or more. But nevertheless, this is one of the most amazing places I've been to anywhere.
This is an incredible rabbit warren. This whole mountain is just full of tunnels, and they all lead to little chambers which monks would have lived in or prayed in, and they all congregate round the Buddha here. And as you can see, the top of his face has been carved off. It may have been Genghis Khan, it may have been pilgrims, or it may have been relatively recently. And they've burnt and blackened the face as well. But you can still see it's an incredible sculpture, one of the greatest, I think you'd have to say, in the world.
And then I'm told the reason why they were so reluctant to let us film here. Underneath is a Taliban ammunition dump. I'm only allowed a few minutes, but it's all I need. Suddenly, the frustrations and delays are long forgotten. Just think, this is the place where the Buddha in human form was taken to the world. Before we leave, Abdul has an unpleasant task to perform. It seems our driver's assistant has been spying for the religious police. Maybe it's why we had so many problems getting permission. We'll never know. But Abdul's outraged, not only because he's been spying, but because he's broken a cardinal rule of Islam by being inhospitable to strangers. We pay him out and head for the border.
Okay. Thank you. See you later.
As we head back up the Khyber Pass, I begin to realise what we've achieved. We're one of the few documentary crews who've not been thrown out by the Taliban, largely because we tried to stick to the spirit of their rules. And while we found some of those rules frustrating, they respected us for trying to stick to them. They may have restricted and limited what we could film, but they never tried to censor what we wanted to say. So as I pass the burnt-out tank yet again, I wonder if it'll still be here the next time I pass this way. I also wonder what other secrets lie hidden in this troubled but beautiful land. A land longing to shed its embattled image as it tries to emerge from isolation at the ends of the earth.